I'm Larissa from Beekeeping Made Simple, and in this video I'm going to let you shadow me. I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing, what I'm looking at, so that when you open your very own beehive, you have a better idea of what you are supposed to do. So let's get started. We're just going to take our hive tool in here and get this first frame free. And you want to work with the frame closest to the edge of the box. And you want to work slowly, calmly, and pull your frames out. See what we see. You do not want to hold a frame by the hook of your hive tool, or that is a big beekeeping mistake and will cause you to drop your frame at some point. And so here we have a frame of honey. Really big, heavy, thick frame of honey. And almost always when you're pulling the first frame out of the box, no matter what box it is on the hive, it's usually a frame of honey or it's empty. Let's go down to the next frame. This hive is just 2 boxes. So a lot of these frames should have brood on them, which is what we call those developing bees before they hatch. Here we have another frame of honey, but this one isn't all the way capped. Some honey and some uncapped honey, which is probably still nectar. Here we have another heavy frame of food. So these bees are looking like they have lots of food. It's important when checking your bees to think about the time of year it is and what the bees are trying to do. Because after all, we're not the bees' parents, we're not their owners the way you are for a cat or a dog. You are their helper. They've got this covered, they know what to do. They feed themselves, they clean themselves, they protect their hive from invaders. But sometimes they need help from the beekeeper, and that's where we come in. And now here we have a frame of brood. Good thing, because you of course want brood in your brood boxes. But since this is the second box, the uppermost brood box, you're going to usually see not as much brood. Maybe half the box would be brood and half the box would be honey. Lots of beautiful brood. And this is a sign of a healthy queen and healthy laying. You have a hard time seeing what's under there. Blow on the bees and they start to walk out of the way. Alright, so we're going to write down on our inspection sheet that we have 4 frames of honey and 1 frame of capped brood, and we're seeing a healthy laying pattern. Here we have another frame of capped honey, and I can see just looking down in there, the next frame is capped honey and the next frame is honey. So we'll write that down in our inspection sheet. This hive has a lot of honey. And so far we've only seen 1 frame of brood, pupating bees. They have a good temper. They are pretty calm. No one's trying to sting me. No one's flying in my face. They are active. They seem quite happy. Okay, so we are done with this box. We're going to look at the one below it. And so here we have another frame of food. And as I said, usually the first frame in the box is food. I haven't seen a single drone, and it's very possible that there aren't any drones in the hive anymore because they kick them out when there's not much food to be gathered anymore. Here we have a frame of honey, nectar, and capped brood. If you see a capping over your cell, like these here, either what's inside is going to be honey or it's going to be baby bees ready to hatch, what we call pupa. Right here in the center, we have pupa. And you can see each cell has that definite little hexagon-shaped capping over it. That's how you know it's pupa. Over here, though, we have honey. Now, honey gets capped over when it's ripe and they've evaporated the majority of the moisture out of it, and it's honey, not nectar anymore, but this capping is kind of bumpy. You can't see where each honeycomb cell ends and the next one starts. And then, of course, you know, if you're not sure, then try poking your finger in it. Also, it's common for the bees to put this little rainbow shape of honey and pollen up at the top of the frames, so that there's a little bit of food for easy access to bring over to the baby bees. Because before these bees were capped, pupating, they were larvae and they needed to be fed constantly, all day long. Now, beekeeping is not for the people that like to rush and see how fast they can do things. And that's why I am good at it. And of course, when you first pull out that brood frame, if you want to see your queen, first thing you want to do is look for her. Just spend a couple seconds on each side looking for her before you look at anything else, so that she doesn't have an opportunity to hide. And here we have another frame of brood, and I see capped brood, and I see larva. So this isn't usually a frame you'll find the queen on because she's usually on the frame with eggs. But sometimes when you pull a frame out, she jumps off of that frame and will go on to the frame next to it. I want to make sure that we have a healthy laying queen, which most likely there is, judging by the bees' activity and their calm buzzing sound. But we haven't seen any eggs, and we've only seen just a little bit of large larvae. So that's why we're continuing to look through the brood. You're not going to pull out every single frame in your beehive every single time you inspect it. It's not good for the brood to bother those baby bees so much. And so I'm going to do a quick peek on both sides, looking for that queen. See a bee with some pollen on her. And this is a great, healthy frame of capped brood. This is the sign of a healthy queen, a healthy laying pattern. Cell after cell after cell is capped. Now, you'll see on the other side that it's much more spotty. And that doesn't mean that the queen was unhealthy when she laid this frame. It just means that this brood is probably hatching now, and so you have more cells that are empty. But still not seeing any eggs. So we're going to keep going through this hive. I'm starting to get a little nervous for this hive, actually. They have a good population. And they have lots of capped brood, but I haven't seen any eggs and just a little bit of larva. This hive really likes their propolis. Ah, really small larva, okay. And there we have a frame of honey. And the next one is a frame of honey. So this hive has no eggs in it. What do you do with a hive with no eggs, but lots of brood and a good population? I am starting to smell that smell. You will get to know this smell. There is no other smell in the world like this smell. It is the smell when the beehive getting a little mad. Sometimes I smell it after I've been stung. Sometimes I just smell it when the bees have had enough of me. You will know this smell, trust me. So I put all the frames back very carefully in the order that they were in. And I'm going to take the second box. I'm going to put it on top. Oh boy, this thing is heavy. And I just hold it a little bit above the other box and wiggle it. The bees get out of the way. And then I put it back down.
First thing I like to do is write down the big question that I have. And right now our question is there a laying queen in our beehive? I say laying because that means we have a queen that's laying eggs. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter if there is a queen if she's not laying eggs, because then she's not doing her job and she needs to go, and we need to put a laying queen in our beehive. So let's look at some facts about our inspection. One, the population. The frames were well covered with worker bees, so they have a good population. We look at the brood, and there are 3 stages of brood, the bees before they hatch: egg, larva, pupa. Egg is the first stage, which is what the queen is laying. Then after, on day 4, it hatches to a larva, and then it pupates and the cell is capped. We have lots of capped brood, that last stage of development. a moderate amount of larvae, the middle stage, and we didn't see any eggs. So knowing that we have at least 5 frames of pupa in our hive is good to know, because that means that when the bees die, the current adult bees die walking around the hive, there's still going to be enough bees in the hive for a few weeks, because that capped brood, the pupa, is going to be hatching soon and they will take over. So we have some wiggle room. We don't have to do anything immediately. This is not an emergency situation. We have a population to spare. But because we saw little larvae and no eggs, that lets us know that there was a queen in the hive about a week ago, because an egg hatches to a larva on day 4, and that larva gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the days progress. So I would say the larva we saw in the hive was probably like 3 or 4 days old, plus the 4 days of its egg. So we're looking at about a 7-day-old brood that we're seeing. So there was a queen in the hive laying eggs 7 days ago. And when I look at the inspection notes from last inspection a week ago, a queen was spotted and eggs were spotted. So we know this happened. If a queen went missing, it happened within the last week. Activity. Activity is high. The best way to look at this is to look at the front entrance, preferably before you open the hive, and see how many bees are coming and going. This is what an entrance with high activity looks like. It is common that when there is no queen present and her pheromone therefore is not present, bees can be not as active, because that pheromone actually encourages the bees to be more active and to do more for the hive. Their demeanor was calm, and that's important to know too. And that means that when I opened the hive and when I was inspecting it, bees weren't flying at my veil, they weren't stinging me, and I didn't smell that smell that is released when a bee stings you or when they are getting upset. But I did smell it towards the end when I was closing the hive up. So I would say their demeanor was calm, which is also important, because when bees are aggressive, that can sometimes mean that there is a problem. Just like when you are cranky or aggressive, it can sometimes mean that something is bothering you, which might mean that you're just tired, or you don't feel good, or you are mad about something. Other thing we want to look at is the time of year, fall. This video was filmed in early December, which is very late fall. There is still supposed to be brood present. There still should be a queen laying, but there's going to be considerably less brood present than in the springtime or summertime when there is food. And what do I mean by fall? It doesn't mean the month or the actual season fall. What I mean by fall is it is the season after a high nectar season. So there was a time when there were a lot of flowers blooming and the hive was active and they were bringing in lots of food. And that's what we describe as summertime. And then fall would be the season after a high nectar season, when there's not as much food, there is not as much food coming in, there's not as much food to be gathered, and the beehive population comes down in size. Now, immediately after summertime, the hive population inside will be high, but the amount of laying that the queen does decreases. Towards the end of fall, the population in the hive will then be lower, and the queen might continue to stop to lay less and less until she stops altogether if you have a cold winter with a frost. Or if you live in a place like we do here, then she will never completely stop laying, but she will just lay very little and the hive population will just be pretty small for a few months until springtime comes, which is when lots of flowers start blooming and the hive population increases, and you'll start to see bees coming to the hive with pollen on their legs. So we consider this fall, which is the time of year when there's not a lot of brood present. The queen isn't going to be laying as many eggs, following a time of year when there was a lot of brood present. So it is typical to still see a high population, but to see a decrease in the laying by your queen. However, there still should be laying. Another thing to keep in mind is the beekeeper's mood. I am shooting a video and the comb was really dark in color, which makes it really hard to spot eggs in and I am distracted. And so it is possible that I just didn't see the queen. And when you have really dark comb and you are not seeing a queen on your comb, it is very common for that queen to be dark in color. And so she just blends in with the comb. And you have to keep that in mind and try to keep an eye out for a darker colored queen, and that is often when you will actually find her. Next, I did not see any queen cells, which really points to the fact that there is a queen, and this is the beekeeper's mistake. With all this information, there are 3 possible things that I think could have happened. One, the queen is there. There are some eggs. There just aren't a lot of eggs due to the time of year. And she is doing fine, and she will start laying more eggs when there is more nectar to be gathered. I just probably didn't see her, and I didn't pull out every single frame, to be honest. I left some of the frames in there that I thought were honey frames, so it is possible that she was just on one of those frames. Not always what happens, but can happen sometimes. Next possibility is that the queen is gone or she's dead. Either she could have died during the last inspection, because she was seen a week ago at the last inspection, but suddenly now you don't. Or she could have flown away during the last inspection, or the worker bees could have killed her in this last week when she maybe wasn't laying so many eggs and they thought that it was time to do away with her. But whatever the reason for her being gone or dead, that is a possibility that she is gone or dead. The third is that there could be a queen in the hive, but she could be a failing queen, and she could be laying just very few eggs and in a very spotty way all over the place, which we call a poor laying pattern. And if she's not laying a lot of eggs, then that means she's going to be considerably smaller, and I might just not be seeing her because I am looking for a queen that is the size of a queen bee. Now, there could be other things, I guess, but those are the 3 big ones that I can think of that could have happened. And so these are the next steps that I am going to take. I would wait a few days, not go back in there now because they're already upset and riled up, and open up the hive and really do a good look for the queen and use as little smoke as possible, because smoke can deter the queen. You also really want to keep an eye out for a queen that might be dark in color and blending in with that really dark comb that you see. Since there isn't a hive pop, since the population will be decreasing, another thing that's really important in this area is to keep an eye on the honey. And since the population will be decreasing soon, this is a time that the small hive beetle will just destroy. So next time I inspect my hive, I will look again for the queen. If there is a queen in there, but I'm still not seeing eggs, then you start to look for the young larva, because that young larva I saw the prior week should be older larvae. So you want to look for eggs and small larvae. If you are not seeing either of those, then that means you have either no queen or a queen that is not laying anymore. And you would want to pinch that queen, purchase a new one, and put her in. I like to pinch the queen, wait 5 days, and then put a caged queen in. That way the bees have time to make a queen if they find any eggs or larvae in the hive, and I can pinch those queen cells and then put a caged queen in. The bees will not accept a caged queen if they are making a queen already and there's queen cells in the hive. So you want to give the bees at least 5 days, even 7 days. Let them try to make as many queens as they can, kill them, and then give them a caged queen. If you aren't seeing a queen or any eggs or any small larvae on your second inspection, then you want to buy a queen and put her in. Or you can get a frame of eggs and put that into the beehive. If you're seeing really small larvae in the hive but still no eggs, then you have a laying queen. You're just not finding these eggs, because after a week, after your last inspection with no queen for 2 weeks, you wouldn't have small larvae in the hive. So small larvae is second best to seeing eggs. And if you see a queen and you see eggs, great. Crisis averted, nothing left to do. Thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to download my free Getting Started book. It has how to identify all of these things inside a beehive for you, plus the hive inspection sheet that I used in this video, and lots of other helpful downloads, all in one spot. Next up, check out my video about how to spot eggs in the beehive. plus some really helpful tips for those of you that are having difficulty spotting eggs.